Hello, Mayor, City Council, and Ann Arbor community. I'm Brian Steglitz, Public Services Area Administrator, and I'm here to talk to you today about the fiscal year 24 budget overview for public services. The photos illustrate on this slide indicate the spectrum of services provided by public services. On the right, you sort of see an emergency response associated with failure of buried infrastructure. The photo in the middle is a photo of the all-walk signal installed and new curbless sidewalk on State Street near Central Campus. And on the left is an innovative project to incorporate stormwater management and also a connection to the border-to-border trail associated with the Allenton Burton project. The agenda for this session is I will be spending some time talking about an overview of the service unit and the roles that we play in each of the different service units associated with public services. Also be discussing the utility that we oversee and the rates projected for the coming fiscal year, the major initiatives, and finally I'll end with some highlights of the budget request that we're receiving for fiscal year 24. The public services area has 5 units: engineering, public works, systems planning, water treatment services, and wastewater services. We employ approximately 230 people, manage a budget of $115 million a year, and a capital budget of approximately the same amount. The engineering group oversees our roads, bridges, traffic control, vehicle and pedestrian safety, signs and signals, buried infrastructure, permitting and inspection, private development. Public Works Group maintains the roads, the buried infrastructure. They oversee the solid waste programs, including recycling and composting. They maintain the street inventory, fix those potholes, which we tend to see at the end of our winter, which will be hopefully getting to an end of shortly. Systems Planning Group oversees planning services associated with all of this infrastructure. They manage our stormwater utility and compliance, oversee the public engagement program for public services, and the city are involved with utility modeling and plan review. And of course, the water treatment services are responsible for providing drinking water to 125,000 customers in the Ann Arbor and surrounding communities, and our wastewater treatment services or resource recovery services associated with collection and treatment of wastewater for its return to the customers. So what many folks in the community are not aware of is just the amount of linear infrastructure that public services is responsible for operating and maintaining. So if you add up the water mains, sanitary mains, the stormwater mains, the streets, the sidewalks, we're talking about just under 2,000 miles of linear infrastructure, which would take you from Ann Arbor almost to California, which would be Reno as the crow flies. So I'm going to start with talking a little bit about our water utilities and the water, sanitary, and stormwater, and what some of the capital needs are that we'll be planning on making investments in over the coming year. On the water side, obviously our community, I think, is familiar because we've been speaking a lot about it, is the upcoming facility plan to address replacement of water treatment plants, portions of the water treatment plant that are original from 1938. In addition to working on that, we'll be working on a water distribution plan and doing a significant number of water main replacements, highlighted one by the work that we'll be doing on State Street from William to Southview. On the sanitary side, we'll be completing our Headworks project, which will be nearing completion, and replacing the UV disinfection system. This system was originally installed in 2000, so we're going to be working on version 2.0, and that project will be initiated in the coming. On the stormwater side, stormwater comprehensive plan will be kicked off, as well as some improvements. One of them highlighted is Field Village. And you can see the capital expenditure amounts associated with each of these facilities on this slide. So what I want to illustrate here in this figure is represents our water mains, sanitary, and storm mains and their date of installation. Why this is important, which you'll see in the coming slides, is we had a lot of construction in Ann Arbor in terms of how it was developed in the early 1900s, 1910s and 20s, and then the 1950s and 60s. And if you translate the install dates to when we expect we may need to be replacing that infrastructure, what you'll see is several humps, some of them coming down the road. We're in the middle of one, right now. And what we're seeing is a lot of the original water mains that were installed in the early 1900s had an expected life of about 100 years. So we're right now approaching the end of the life of that buried infrastructure. You see on the water main side also that the mains that were installed in the 1950s and 60s have a life expectancy less than the ones that were installed earlier, and they're actually coming due in some cases at around the same time. So we see this big hump over the next 10 years of where we're expecting that we're going to need to be replacing some of our buried infrastructure. So just want to highlight that while we're focusing on things like replacing vertical infrastructure at water treatment plant, we also need to be focused on the buried, because we're getting to a point where some of that may be reaching the end of the useful life. And when we start talking about the rate projections for the coming years, we've incorporated some of those needs into our future financial plan. So what is our rate projections for the coming year? So this slide illustrates an average customer bill for water, sewer, and storm of just under $250 based on 1,800 cubic feet of usage over a quarter. That is equivalent to approximately 150 gallons per day. And with our proposed increases, which are illustrated in the slide at the bottom, you see what a bill would look like coming in July of 2023. So the rate increases that we're proposing for this coming fiscal year are consistent with the plans that we've presented in prior fiscal years. So that we have not made adjustments to these percentage increases. They address what we anticipate our capital needs are for this coming term. It's important to us that we reinforce the value of the water utility services provided to the community. And what a lot of our customers don't understand when we talk about the value of the water services provide is that for us to deliver 1 gallon of water to their homes or their businesses to the tap, it costs about 0.6 cents a gallon. And when you compare that to the cost of bottled water, City of Ann Arbor water is about 200 times less expensive. And on the wastewater or resource recovery side, our cost for collecting and treating a gallon of water is about one penny. So we still continue to maintain an affordable water utility services for the community. I'm going to transition now to talk about street sidewalks and non-motorized infrastructure and some of our plans for the coming year. So on the street side, you see we have an anticipated investment of about 17 million. We're fortunate to be able to make this investment in the coming year with the implementation of the road bond, which has allowed us to move forward a bunch of street resurfacing projects. So in combined with the work on the value of the investment from the road bond and the local resurfacing program, we're able to make this investment of about 17 million in this coming year. From the sidewalk program, we're looking at about a $5 million investment to work on things like sidewalk gaps and sidewalk repairs. And then on non-motorized investments, you'll see a pretty substantial increase from previous years. And this is because we've been fortunate to receive a lot of grant opportunities, which I'll talk about a little bit later in this slide presentation. But this will allow us to advance things like quick build projects and also to continue implementing our Vision Zero transportation plan. Historically, we've spent approximately $500,000 a year on non-motorized investments. So this is a substantial increase. And while we hope that we will be able to achieve all the things that we planned in the coming year, the funding that we may not completely use this year would be able to roll over into next fiscal year, so we can continue to wrap up those non-motorized projects that we initiate in fiscal year. So this slide talks about what our approach is, or illustrates what our approach is to investing in our resurfacing. Historically, the approach for repairing roads typically was worst first. So the roads that were crumbling was where we were investing our resources. And what we found and learned over time with implementing proper asset management practices is that If you invest in the road at the right time, you can extend its life, and that is actually the most cost-effective way to extend the life of the asset. So on this figure, you see is what the condition of the road looks like over the course of its life. And if we can continue to invest in capital preventative maintenance, like crack sealing and surface treatments early on in the life before of the road, before it gets down to a poor or fair condition, we can continually invest and extend the life. And that's what you see illustrated here by these vertical connections and then the curves, the blue bars, the blue curves moving out to the right, extending the life of the road in a good condition. That doesn't mean we won't invest in our roads that are in poor condition. And our approach is actually to use a suite of tools in our toolbox, some surface treatments so we can continue to work on capital investment in some of our resources, but then also trying to chip away at some of the roads that are in the worst condition. And we find this is going to be our best approach in order to improve the integrity of our roads in the long term. Now I'm going to quickly transition to solid waste. We have some exciting new opportunities that we're going to be discussing or working on in the coming year. And the first is we'll have a new commercial solid waste franchise agreement for customers in the downtown area. This franchise agreement will allow customers to have direct billing and customer service directly from the franchise provider, which is anticipated to be Waste Management. There'll be a single point of responsibility, a quicker response and more direct, because the customers will be able to deal directly with the service provider. So we're excited about being able to roll out that new program in summer. We also are excited to announce that we've been able to come to an agreement with Recycle and Arbor for them to continue to provide commercial and multifamily recycling services for the community. And then last, we are working on planning the new drop-off station. So we know that the current condition of the existing drop-off station is in poor condition, and we need to be replacing that with a facility that has service to a larger community for Ann Arbor and some surrounding areas, and also is able to have good structural integrity and can meet the needs of its customers. And we are currently working on the planning of that facility, and will be hopefully beginning to construct in the coming year. So there are three major focus areas that a lot of the work that we're planning on working on under the coming year fall under the umbrella of these highlights. I want to quickly touch base on each one of these. The first is the aggressive capital investments in public infrastructure. So I've shared a lot of some of those investments that we plan to make. I talked about the drop-off station, the investment in the drinking water system, water plant replacement, and then numerous multimodal transportation improvements and rights of way. Again, we anticipate spending on the capital side over $100 million in the coming year in capital investment. And the outcome of this is we hope that this will do several things. One is enhance the circular economy. Drop-off station fits under that umbrella. We want to make sure that we're ensuring safe drinking water for our community for the long term. And that's the investments we're making on the drinking water side of the drinking water equipment. And then improving safety for all users of our street and sidewalk network. We know that's a high priority for folks in the community. The second focus area is advancing resiliency planning and climate adaptation. Our stormwater comprehensive plan, our drainage studies on gravel roads, the drinking water distribution plan. All of these are examples that fall under that umbrella of advancing climate resiliency adaptation. We need to make sure that our utilities are able to handle and adapt to the changing climate, and that the work that we do protects our natural resources. And then lastly, providing responsive customer service and guidance to developers looking to invest in our community. We know that in order for Ann Arbor to be sustainable in the long run, we need to be able to attract new business and economic development. And to do that, we need to make sure a few things are in place, that we have capacity in our utilities to be able to serve future needs. So we need to make sure that we are studying that. And we have coming down the road in the next few years, 5,000 new beds off of Central Campus. And we're excited to be partnering and helping the University of Michigan prepare for this, the the development that they're planning in terms of expanding dorms for their students. We need to make sure our utilities are going to be able to sustain the additional usage associated with that population. We need to make sure our specifications are meeting the best practices and current standards for folks who want to be doing development and growth in our community. And then there are the processes that we have in place are developer friendly. We want to make we want developers to have a good experience when they're working within Arbor and want to come back and continue to work. So we'll be working on all of those things. And these will help facilitate private development in the city in the long run. I'm going to spend a little time now walking through each of the different service units and highlighting just a few of the priorities and opportunities that we've identified in the coming year. And it falls under each one of these. So the first one I'll mention here is implementing the equitable engagement steering committee recommendations. So there are a few things that came out of that. We need to make sure that when we're engaging the community, we're providing access to all community members. And knowing that they have the ability to be able to find the resources they need in order to provide feedback and be engaged at the level that they want with projects and work that we're doing. And a couple of recommendations that we'll be working on over the coming year is a community liaison pilot, an engagement hub web resource. So there's a one-stop shop for folks getting access to information about public services projects. And making sure that we're communicating with them in a language that they understand. So we need to have translation services available, and we need to make sure we do that. On the issue of workforce and succession planning, workforce development and succession planning. Over the last year, we've had a 15% turnover in workers in public services area. So we will need to make sure that they have the tools they need to be successful, and that's part of our workforce development plans for the coming year. While we've had a fair number of retirements over the past year, we're seeing that we may have some other folks who will be leaving the workforce over the coming year. We need to make sure that we have plans in place so we can continue to provide excellent service to our customers as we're having a lot of knowledge leave the organization. Talking a little now, moving on to engineering. I mentioned traffic calming, so we have some resources set aside to continue to advance traffic calming initiatives in the community. We're going to be partnering with the Downtown Development Authority to do a circulation study in the downtown area and look at how vehicles, pedestrians, bicycle traffic flow and what improvements we can be making. There will be a robust public engagement. In engineering, we're going to be seeking to add 2 new positions, a private development specialist and a civil engineer, 3 positions that will help run capital projects. These are currently positions that we're contracting out to consulting services, and we believe that we have the long-time need and the future workload to sustain these roles in-house. So we're proposing that we add these positions to be full-time city employees. In public works, we have some needs associated with replacing some equipment. We're adding new equipment. A front loading recycling dumpster truck is one. It's one piece of equipment that we'll be proposing to be purchasing as part of the fiscal year 24 budget. And the second item on this list is really exciting. We'll be creating and implementing a new commercial compost program, and we'll be using a temporary employee to help get us out of the gate. Right now, composting services is available to residential customers only, so this will enable us to be able to expand that program for commercial businesses. And you can see that the funding source is our climate millage. So we're excited to be able to have a new funding source to be able to help us advance this important program. We're also looking for additional resources to expand our tree watering program. Some work and studies that we've done have identified that we can really reduce the fatalities of newly planted trees if we can expand the watering program from 1 to 3 years. We believe that this will help us make sure that we're protecting the investment that we're making in the tree canopy, which is an important part of our stormwater management program. And then the last item I'll mention here is the new FTE associated with our Cross Connections Control Program. Cross Connections Control Program is an important program to associate with public safety of the city's drinking water to make sure the water system is prevented from contamination. And this particular position will help us advance and move forward that important program over the coming years. In systems planning, the second item on the list here is our stormwater comprehensive plan. I've alluded to that a couple of times already, but this is really an important project that we'll be getting initiated in the coming year to look at how our stormwater system can manage things like climate change in weather patterns, aligned with what our development needs are in the community. So we're really looking forward to understanding and helping this plan provide a roadmap for our future investments in our stormwater system. Another thing that we've heard a lot about from several areas of the community are concerns about stormwater accumulation in areas where there's gravel roads. So we're going to be also initiating in this first year of a 4-year plan to make some investments and doing some drainage studies to determine what we can do to help address some of the stormwater management challenges that we're facing in some of these areas. On water treatment side, I talked all about the work that we're going to be doing associated with preparing for the replacement of the water treatment plant. So that's a big portion of what one of the things we're focusing on. This first item that we have identified here, dam safety compliance at Garden and Superior Dams. The dams were installed in the early part of the 20th century. So they're over 100 years old, and we're finding that there are some stability issues associated with the earthen embankments. So we'll be using consultants to help support and study and develop design solutions to address some of the stability items that have been raised through some of our dam inspections that have been conducted over recent years. We're going to be seeking a grant for $150,000 to conduct some water quality research associated with the work that we're doing to prepare for replacements of the aging portions of the water treatment plant. We'll be looking at studies on how we can address some of the emerging contaminants that we're facing in the community. And this work will be done in partnership with the University of Michigan, and hopefully we'll be seeking grants again to provide a match associated with that investment. We'll also be proposing to add a new position, which is a utilities engineer for capital projects. As we embark on this significant water treatment plant replacement project, which is anticipated to cost in the neighborhood of $100 million, which would be the largest project in the history of the city's water system, we realize that we really need to have a dedicated engineer on staff to be able to manage all the complexity associated with that. So with all the additional work that we need to implement in the water system, this additional position will help us be able to manage combination of the significant capital project that is involved in replacing the water plant and the other work planned. The other item that you'll see here is chemical and residuals management costing. We're seeing this at both of our treatment plants, that inflation and supply chain issues have really impacted the cost of our doing business. So we anticipate we'll have approximately $150,000 extra needs on the water side in order to address chemical contract increases. And then on the wastewater side, we see a similar impact here of about $90,000 on our annual rate. The other item that I'll highlight on the wastewater side is, or the resource recovery side, is electrical gear preventive maintenance. So this is important to make sure that the gear is clean, functional, and it's an investment we make every few years to go through all the electric gear at both of these facilities. But this year is planned for the wastewater plants to make sure that it will perform reliably. I've mentioned that we are trying to leverage grants whenever possible. And this slide illustrates some really great success we've had in recent time over the past several months in being successful in achieving grants that will help us really advance a lot of the initiatives that we have planned. So Safe Streets for All, almost $4 million. This will help us advance a lot of the quick build projects that I have alluded to earlier, help us address pedestrian safety. As we work on replacing our drop-off station, which is a major focus of our work in solid waste, we have secured a grant from the state to help us advance that project in almost $1 million. We have another grant from the state to address contamination risks. So this will allow us to pilot some new modifications at the city's water treatment plant in our filters to advance our ability to remove PFAS from the drinking water source. We just were notified recently of a streetlight upgrade grant at almost $1 million to replace and install LED streetlights. So you can see we've had a lot of success, and this really will leverage our ability to advance a lot of initiatives that we've important and identified as priorities. And there are still grants that we're pursuing and identified down here. We're currently seeking to help us fund the stormwater comprehensive planning project that I previously mentioned. The other thing I want to highlight is partnerships. So when available, we're always looking to work with our community partners to advance the work that we're doing. And here lists, several examples. The University of Michigan has been a great partner we're working on our future water needs, and they will actually be, we'll be using students to operate and maintain the pilot plant that we're in the process of currently building. We've worked with the University of Michigan on previous pilot work at the wastewater plant or the resource recovery facility. And they've also partnered on doing COVID sampling in our wastewater with the University of Michigan. The city administrator has secured an arrangement where we're going to be able to use Eastern Michigan University students to help us work on several types of initiatives throughout the organization. And we're hoping to be able to take advantage of using one of those to work on some of our water resource plans for the company. The University of Michigan has partnered with us on some capital projects that they have direct interest in because it serves some of their community. Many of you are familiar with East Medical Center Pride Bridge, but also South Main Street Sidewalk is another project for the University of Michigan, the city. We work with the AAATA and the University on transportation related projects. An example would be transit signal priority pilots, which is something we'll be working on. The Washtenaw County Resource Commission is also another partner. We work with them regularly on stormwater management initiatives. And then lastly, the DDA. And I've already talked a little bit about the downtown circulation study, but that's a highlight of something that will be coming from the current year that we'll be working on. And of course, we realize that with all of the projects that we're working on throughout the coming years, we need to make sure that we're involving the community and having them have an opportunity to participate. And on all the things that I've mentioned, we have public engagement strategies and plans, and we'll be using those throughout the year to involve the community in all of these projects. Really, we understand that their involvement and engagement only will make the projects and their outcomes stronger. Some other feedback that we've been hearing over the past few years from the community is they want more data and want to see transparency in terms of communications and the work that we're doing and progress. So we've made a lot of strides recently to advance our ability to share real-time information on the work that we're doing. One example is the water quality newsletter that we put out monthly, where we have information on water quality parameters that are important to you. Our pavement condition dashboard that we recently released is another example where people can go look in there. They can look at what the most recent rating of the condition of their road is, identify when it's maybe coming up in the capital improvement plan for resurfacing. And also our capital improvement plan has an interactive GIS-based website now where the community can go in, look through the capital improvement plan, identify what projects are happening and where they are in the community. So our hope is over the coming year to advance these types of initiatives throughout public services and provide more access to the community on things that we're doing, so they can have the information they need at their fingertips. Some other things, just in addition to the newsletters, we're also providing video updates on projects and programs. So it's another thing that we'll be seeing more of. Short video snippets where you can hear from staff members on what may be coming, or a summary of projects. And in addition to all of these communication tools, we also have a subscription-based email tool in Gov Delivery where community members can subscribe to things that are important to them, and they can get regular email updates. We have social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Nextdoor to communicate. Obviously, the city's website is a tool. CTN also is a place where we will use in order to advance our communication on certain topics. And CTN has a YouTube channel, which is where some of that information can be accessed. That is the conclusion of my presentation. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with me today. If you have any questions about the budget process, please send them to Sarah Higgins, copy the city administrator, Mr. Dahoney, Marty Prashan, and Kim Busselmeyer, and we will organize those responses by topic and throughout the budget process, and provide the feedback to folks who are asking questions. Thank you again.